into You Are the Universe. How many people got bogged down in the book this week and put it down? Come on, you aren't being honest. I know I did. It's like, and for someone like me who is the how-to guy, I wasn't getting a whole lot of how-to out of all of this incredible science that's happening in our world today. But I reframed the title of the book, and guess what? I bought the book, so I have the right to do that. And so do you. And I reframed the book from You Are the Universe to You, I, Am My Reality. Because that's what this book is really about, is universe on a big picture, but it applies to us in our reality, what's happening in our own world. And these 3 chapters began to take on a different understanding when I began to see it from there. So as we go through it, just remember, it's about the reality of you, your life, as we move forward from this present moment, which becomes our future and our destiny. For those who haven't been here last week, it's a book written by Deepak and Menaeus, depending how you say his word in Greek. But he's a quantum physicist who got together with Deepak Chopra and wrote this book about a year ago. I think it was published. But one of the keys that comes out of here is this quote that's in the very near the back. So yeah, I cheated. I already went to the back. But it's consciousness is the key to evolution, and we're going to be proving that in science. And that's what this book is really about, is where the latest scientific theories are. And what I love about these 2 scientists is they also are willing to show where science can't give an answer. And that's when I embraced my unity principles and my unity teaching. And this week I really reflected back on the decision 7-8 years ago to begin to do the work to become a unity minister. I'm so appreciative of the teachings that we have that can fill in the gaps that our greatest minds in the scientific world cannot. And we're going to look at some of that today. But both of them, is a quote in this book near the back, that self-awareness is the key to freedom. All of us want to be free, don't we know? Free healthy, free in abundance, free in spirit and soul, and happiness and joy. And they're saying, after all this science that they talk about, the key to this is our self-awareness. And I had to think back to the Greek Delphi temple, way back when, know thyself. And here we are in 2020, and we're hearing exactly the same thing. Know thyself. And that self-awareness is the key to freedom. So there was a lot of time spent this week in these 3 chapters about how the universe was created. And the question I had, well, why does it matter? Well, when you begin to make that reframe from this is how the universe was created to this is how I create my own reality, we begin to look for some how-tos that can be able to help us on a daily basis. And so I'm going to try to toggle back and forth, but I thought before we do, you know, the old saying is when you stretch the mind, it never goes back. My mind was completely stretched this week in trying to understand what this word universe is all about. The Big Bang, the origin of the universe, is 13.8 billion years ago. I don't know how long ago that was, but it was long. Almost 14 billion years. But what's so interesting is our scientists have no idea what was on the other side of the Big Bang. They call it the Chinese wall that you can't see through. What was there? What was the raw material? What was the intelligence that allowed this Big Bang, or was it purely randomness or chance? And that's the quandary that they have today in that process. But that was not new to me. This was. The universe is 14 billion light years large. Now I want to put this in context. light travels at 186,000 miles per second. From here to LA is 3,000 miles. 186,000 miles per second, and it takes 14 billion light years at that speed. I don't know how big that is, but it's big. Bigger than you and I can even fathom. And so on Tuesday night class, I gave them an exercise this week, was to pretend that they were Einstein and get on the back of a light beam and see what that felt like at 186,000 miles a second. I got one for us today. In your mind, in your imagination, imagine what 14 billion light years is. I don't think we can. It's that big. The universe has, we now know, 80 billion galaxies. We're in one, the Milky Way. One of the small ones, by the way. And in the Milky Way galaxy alone, in one of the small ones, there's 200 to 400 billion stars just in that galaxy. And we're just not even a speck in the Milky Way. There are more stars in the sky than grains of sand on the earth. I want to meet the mathematician that proved this. How does they know? That's a lot of sand. I said to Jacqueline, you know, I was envisioning when we were at Myrtle Beach and the sand around me, and I was starting to count little grains of sand. I was like, that's this little piece, and all the oceans and all the sand. This is big, beyond our human understanding. It's big. And according to NASA's microwave probe, the universe we now know is only 4.6% matter. Of all those stars, the 80 billion in just the Milky Way, and there are the 80 billion galaxies, make up only 4.6 of the universe. 24% is made up of dark matter. What is dark matter? That's things called black holes. It's antimatter. We can't see in them. We know they exist, but we don't have a clue what they are, but all of a sudden matter turns into no more matter. And it's called dark matter. But 74.6% of the universe is dark energy. You cannot see it, but it exists, they now know. And according to NASA's Kepler, we now know this. They've discovered over 1,000 potential Earths in deep space. What do we need to have an Earth, a biosphere like we have here? You need to have a magnetic core that's strong enough to have a consistent gravity that keeps an atmosphere inside so living things can exist. They believe there's now 1,000 of them, and the closest one is Kepler 452b, which is 1,400 light years away. That's not quite back to the time of Christ. It would take that long for that light to get to that potential Earth. So when the question is there other humans in the universe, the chances are probably pretty good, I would say. But when we begin to try to understand what gets us to this place, that's where science has a problem. The reality you experience is a mirror image of your expectations. What do you expect out of life? Do you expect that it's true, that it's all good? And your focus is going to be on all that's good? Or is your focus going to be then all that's bad or not good? It doesn't matter. You get to choose that. And whatever your choice is going to be what you experience in your universe or in your reality. This is no different than what we've learned at Unity all these years, over and over again. But we're seeing that we're in agreement scientifically, and we're seeing that it actually portrays itself in the universe and also in our reality. So the chapter was, why does the universe fit so perfectly together? Most scientists can't use the word God, right? They want to prove randomness. They want to prove chance. They want to prove coincidence just happened. At the magnitude of what we just talked about, I have a hard time believing that's chance. But here's the two predominant theories. One, it's an anthropic principle. Fancy scientific word. What does it mean? All of this just happened by chance. And it kept happening, and all of a sudden, there was a perfect earth. And we could live there. That's the anthropic principle at work. The basic tenet is there's wrinkles happen in the quantum field, or the vacuum, and out of that it began to make matter. And out of that, out of complete luck, we ended up with this perfect earth and this incredible biosphere that you and I get to live on and be so grateful for. I mean, if the closest potential is 1,400 light years away, we better honor the one we're on. Because there is nothing else coming to save it that is any closer than 1,400 light years away. But I just cannot buy that this just happened out of chance and out of randomness. Maybe you can, and that's fine. Everyone gets to believe what they believe. But out of your beliefs and out of your expectations comes your reality. But they went, oh wait, there was this thing called fine-tuning. Who fine-tuned it? Oh no, but that was chance. And it just kept going, and well, it didn't work, so then it redid this and that, and over 14 billion years, we got this perfection. Deepak says this is the cosmic equivalent of 100 monkeys typing randomly on typewriters, eventually producing the complex works of Shakespeare. All the volumes of Shakespeare. That's what, if you are of a scientific mind, have to accept. If you want to believe that is only purely random and purely luck and purely coincidence. It doesn't work for me. When I look out at what I see too much order. I see spring showing up. I see March 21 coming around. Every year that I've been alive, it seems to happen perfectly. Tomorrow is a full moon. It happens on schedule. It is not random or chance. The second one that our authors buy into, which I have just as much difficulty in, is that the universe is self-organizing. And layers upon layers, and we have back channels and loops back to the layer below, and we build, the DNA built this, and then it goes back and makes sure it's in alignment with that DNA. That doesn't make any more sense to me than the first one, quite honestly. But that is a system that has been put together, and they call it the recursive system of self-organization. Layer, evolved in layer, evolved in layer. Self-organization. This is a quote from the book. Self-organization is embedded in the fabric of the cosmos, acting like an invisible off-stage choreographer. That seems to me like to be a really good definition for God. An off-stage choreographer. Someone who had a plan and put together this idea, this creative idea to build this universe and build this planet. But our scientists cannot use that word. Einstein said this at the very near the end of his life. He said, I want to know all of God's thoughts, and all the rest is just noise. It's just details. Who cares? It's a big WC. Who cares? If I had the thoughts of God, Einstein said, that's all I need to go forward with an understanding this was the greatest scientific mind that ever came out of the humans. So then we get to which thank you for your song today, fits perfect. Where does time come from? Does it exist? And what we find scientifically, that it is relative to you and me. Does time not change when you're sitting 2 hours in traffic? It's forever. We say that. You wouldn't believe I was at that stoplight forever. Really? Forever? Felt that way. It's relative. But what we actually know, as you go out into space further and further from the gravitational pull, the clock slows down. The further from the gravitational pull of the center of the Earth, the watch begins to slow down. Astronauts have to keep making changes to get it back relative to what's happening in Houston. Every couple of years, we have to change the atomic clock, add a couple seconds, because the Earth rotation is slowing down. It's all relative. And it's all relative to where you are in the process. Einstein said this: the past and the future are illusions, only the present moment exists. We hear that in Unity, we hear that in New Thought teachings all over. Stay present. Stay in the moment. I will dare say it's one of the most difficult things all of us can do. Because our minds are programmed to go to the past, to the regrets, to the shames and the blames, or to the future, to all the anxiety and the fear. Back and forth, back and forth. The actual amount of time any of us, even if we're unaware, that spend in the present moment is almost next to nothing. They've done studies about this scientifically, being able to measure the brain activity. But as we become aware and as we begin to know how to meditate on the fly, during the day, while we're driving the car, while we're walking, while we're working, we can get more and more present moments. But we were taught this, for those who grew up in churchianity as I did, we were taught that after death you get to experience heaven for eternity. This understanding is you can experience this present moment in heaven or bliss, whichever word you like, or harmony, is able to experience now. We don't have to wait until we leave the planet, or leave the physical. We can learn the tools that allow us to be able to do that in this moment. So they've got a device in Geneva, Switzerland, that can exceed the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. When you exceed light, time goes backwards. So we have the beginnings of a time machine. I was thinking how cool that would be a couple centuries from now. You sit in that machine and all of a sudden I'm not 66, I'm 46. And I hope I'd be 46 knowing what I know today. That would be good. I wonder if that experience goes with you when you go back in time. But what they found when they did this, the most amazing thing happened, and teleportation occurred. Without any time lapse, the photon jumped to a new location with zero time. It was instantly in another place. You can only imagine when you hear this and you think about what 100 years looks like. When I can sit there and I have a brain that I can say, teleport me. I guess we'll have to get our bodies, maybe we need to be enlightened. And once we have enough light in our bodies, we will be able to teleport wherever we want. The future looks so good. So they talk in the quantum of what is a state. A state is really important to understand because state of mind is what you and I live in, do we not? Every day we have a state of mind. When dealing with the quantum domain, another state is involved and they call it virtual state. Virtual state is what I would say in unity is spirit before it's manifested in the physical. In the matter. And that's what it's called. The virtual state in quantum is when it's in the wave and not a particle. Can't be seen, can't be touched. But along came this machine in Geneva, Switzerland in 2012 proved this Higgs boson, which became called the God particle and really ticked off all the scientists. But it was the first time they were able to see in the wave in the quantum field, by the observer's presence, material came out of the quantum. Now I'm talking at the photon level, right? So we're not doing it yet in human beings in the physical. But we are in our minds. But we now know scientifically what we do inside our minds does create that reality or that universe that we live in. Now proven scientifically. A quantum change of state is the, he says, basic act of creation. So you and I sitting right here, right now, in this present moment, can change state, can we not? And as we become more aware of it, we realize we change it all the time, right? We can wake up in the morning and feel like I'm on top of the world, and all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, what happened to my state? These states are not locked in. They're variable. They're moving just like the wave of the quantum. We participate in the universe through changes of state. This is how you and I go through the universe. They talk a lot about the participatory universe. Anyone not here today, this service does not exist for them. It only exists for you and I because we showed up. And as we change our states in the quantum, as we change our states in spirit, that is what's guiding us through each and every day that we go through. Let me give you a quick example. There's a knock at the door. You walk to the door, it's a stranger. And the stranger says, I was just on Ancestry.com and I'm your brother of 40 years. I've been looking for you forever. And what happens? There's an emotional and a physical response. 3 days later, a knock comes to the door, there's a stranger. And the stranger's an IRS agent, said, I'm here to take you home. Same trigger. Knock on the door, a stranger. Totally different state of mind, would you say? Totally different state of mind, totally different physical reaction. Just from words that were said. First the trigger, they showed up. Then the words they spoke. Our mental reaction, then the physical reaction. That occurs to you and I every minute of every day. Whether it's what flashes on the news, what comes across your Facebook, what someone says or doesn't say to you, or a look. Sometimes looks carry more of this than the words. But our states change our universe. I would dare say that person who experienced the brother who's been long lost and the one in front of the IRS agent, two different states completely. Same triggers until the words occur. Deepak goes on to say, mind comes before matter. It's exactly what we've been teaching at Unity for all these years, 100 plus years. It's why our thoughts matter. Because they create the universe. They create a reality of that matter. I love this quote because the number one fear of all human beings is fear of death. If we can look past the illusion created by clocks, the race against time comes to an end and the fear of death is erased once and for all. We've been teaching at Unity for 100 plus years, there is no death. There's a transition of energy, there's a transition of state from physical to spirit, but we are eternal spiritual beings. And as we begin to really integrate this into our belief system, into our faith, all that fear of death goes away, and it is the number one fear no matter how many times in what country they do the questions. So finally, what is the universe made of? For centuries, we believed that it was the atom, as far back as the Greeks. And how did they get there? Because they kept chopping things up into smaller pieces. And they got to this word they called atom, which meant not cut. Couldn't cut it any further. It was the smallest particle that they could perceive. They couldn't see it back then. They couldn't measure it. But somehow in divine knowledge, they knew that this thing existed called the atom. But something happened. The atom has now vanished. Because as we go into the quantum field, the atom is much too large. It is much smaller than that when we get into quarks and photons. And it's so small. And as this atom's vanished into the quantum vacuum, we're left with a lot of questions that we don't have answers for. So here's the scientific quandary. They cannot measure anything anymore. It is too small or too big. We've measured what we can measure. Now we're getting more instruments. I mean, the instrument in Geneva that speeds photons up beyond is fairly new. But we can't measure beyond what we have right now. So we're left with this. It's either we're at a dead end scientifically, or we begin to think. That's where science is today. It's a dead end as far as measurement. Is that not what science always was so proud of? They pound their chest. We only believe what we can measure. You can't measure it anymore. Now what? And that's why I think we're seeing, slowly but surely, the consciousness in the world is changing, where science and spirituality are coming together in new thinking. New thinking kind of sounds like new thought, huh? Yeah. It's the only way we're getting answers to what we have no way to measure. Max Planck, who was the founder of quantum mechanics, said this at the end. Consciousness is a fundamental issue. Consciousness. This is a quantum physicist, scientist. And I regard matter as a derivative from consciousness, not the cause. It comes from, that's a fact. We cannot get beyond consciousness. That's the Chinese wall of what's beyond the Big Bang. What is the raw material for string theory or M theory or any other theory they have? They cannot answer the question, where did the intelligence come from and where was the raw materials to have what they believe happened? And that's why I love what we do at Unity, because we have some answers. At least for me, they're what I believe. So we talk, remember, not only Deepak, but Menace, and now Max. All of our scientists, at the very end of it all, and Einstein say it's got to be consciousness. I put the word God consciousness for it. I know it'll make them really nervous. But it's the same thing. There's one consciousness, one power, one presence. Call it consciousness or God consciousness. Doesn't matter. And the only way we can experience ourselves, the omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient, is if we experience it within us. We are so long past talking about it. We are so long past preaching about it. We're so long past thinking about it. It's the experience of this that's within each and every one of us. And as we get focused on that one power and that one presence and all knowledge that is only good within us, we have the ability to understand the difference between fact and truth. COVID-19 has created fear in our society. When we lost $4 trillion in the stock market in 2 weeks, that's called fear. And probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 to $12 trillion worldwide. And you know, I honor the 13 people who have died. But 2 years ago, we had 6,100 people died from flu in this country. And there was no fear. Mind before matter. Understand the difference between facts and truth. Truth is you and I are divine health. We can make whatever reality, whatever universe, whatever we want with here and here, what we think and what we feel. And what we focus on, our state of mind. And I don't know a better time in my life to practice what we know in unity than in this moment. Because we are surrounded by the negativity at all levels. And when the master teacher said you were the light of the world, he meant that you stayed focused on the good and let the good come through you. Buddha said this, one of the hardest things to do in life is letting go of what you thought was real. This whole notion of Maya, of illusion, of time, of space, of matter. We now know scientifically that it is an illusion. Buddha knew this 2,500 years ago. Somehow, I don't know how, he couldn't measure it. But he had divine and wisdom that what you're seeing in the physical and what you're making real is not real. It's an illusion. It's a mirage. Get centered in the truth within yourself. Shankara said this, I am free now from the illusion. I am free from the dream. I am free from all effects of the illusion. I am witnessing consciousness of purity. Pure consciousness lies within each and every one of us. But it only lies as potential unless you and I go there and recognize it, acknowledge it, then we can realize it. Otherwise, it just goes by every day. Lao Tzu said there is no illusion greater than fear. Fear is an illusion. It's not truth. Don't let the illusion become your truth. And finally, the great master teacher said this, take no thought for your life. Take no thought for the illusion. Take no thought for the Maya, the mirage. Stay centered in the truth that's within your being. And finally, do not judge according to appearances, but judge with righteous judgment. Righteous judgment today is that you and I are divine health. And if you hold that consciousness, it will be your reality. It will be your universe. Emily Cady said this, all is God and the rest is a lie. All is God and the rest is a lie. Let's go to stillness. So we take a couple deep breaths. Understanding that there's a very strong collective consciousness of fear, anxiety, of disease at this moment on the planet. But we don't have to participate in it. We can recognize it for what it is, that it has no power in its own. The power lies within us. The truth lies within us. In this moment, feel the consciousness, the God consciousness, Spirit consciousness, Christ consciousness, Buddha consciousness, whatever word works for you. But there's a purity of consciousness within you that is only truth. And in this moment, we go there. And feel it flow through every of our 50 trillion cells in our body, in our mind. And so it is.